Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Leading Change live, sort of live, online class. We'll be fielding questions and hopefully sharing with you some of the answers that you are seeking. I see that people are coming on, and we're going to get started here pretty soon. I hope you're having amazing fellowships. I'm really looking forward to seeing each and every one of you when you land, inshallah, ojalá, in Washington, D.C. So I see that you're all showing up, and we'll get started here shortly. Now, you have a group chat. You will find that I can't see that chat. I don't know why. The person who is recording for some reason can't see the chat, but Emily Levy can. And so she will send me via messenger your questions and your comments. And so feel free at any time to type in that group chat, to say hello to one another, and to gather that information. I believe the group chat will show up, however, in the recording. So feel free to add that information in. Thank you so much. We have, I think, at least 60 people that have already registered and more that we're just going to hop on. So we will, and I've gotten about 18 different questions from you, and I'm going to show you those questions here shortly. All right, so it looks like I'm getting, yep, Emily is writing me, so I will use the phone to make all this technology work. And there we go. Okay. They're looking, okay, so Vincent from AUCD just said they were looking for content for coaching and mentorship. Okay, so we can try to add information on that. And also know, my friends, that I will send, after this recording is done, I will send all of you as registered participants, I'll send you a resource list. So coaching and mentorship. Oh. So thank you, Emily, and thank you, everyone. Thank you, Vincent, for that question. So what I'm going to do, let's see if we can practice this. I'm going to screen share. I'm going to look here. We're going to go into the online session. Here we go. Let me give you some slides. And there we go. Okay. So you should be seeing my, and I know there's a little bit of a lag, you should be seeing a set of slides that say Leading Change Online Session, and my name and Professional Fellows Program. So as I was saying, you can chat with each other on YouTube, but I can't see it. But Emily Levy can, and so please, if you have questions, send them that way, or just connect with me on Facebook Messenger. So I'll be using the phone throughout and making sure that if you have questions, we can get that. Okay. Can you, okay, it was up and now it's black. Let's see. Can you see those slides? Thank you, Emily, for keeping me organized here. Can you see, I have a slide up that says your questions. So crossing my fingers that those have shown up. Let me read those questions to you, and we'll see if it's working. Not yet. Okay, darn. Let's see. I'm going to come back out. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute, and we'll see. But I'll read. Why don't I read these questions to you, and then so you have a sense of all the neat topics that we're going to talk about today. Some of you asked how to develop leadership skills in yourself and team members, and how to create outdoor activities. So we'll talk about that. And what are the most common characteristics of a great leader, and the role of humor. So we're going to talk about that first. One of you brought up that a leader is anyone who wishes to help at this time. And and that you wanted to know about learning and growing. And another asked, how does a leader empower others instead of just using his or her power? What's the difference between servant leadership and empathetic leadership? And does the hero and host article work in all countries? Some just want to be delegated to. Should all leaders have critical thinking skills and be unbiased? Can we master leadership at any point in our life? And is there a link between leadership and age? We're going to talk about women's leadership strategies today, and talk about how to create balanced goals and to manage that with time management. Okay, so you still have a blank screen, so I'm going to get off of this and see if you can see me here. All right. Thank you. I love technology. It's so helpful, but then we have things like this where all of a sudden we go into a blank screen. Okay. How do we turn camera on? Let's see. We're going to go back here. Thank you, dears, for your patience as we learn. Okay. Let's see. Are we lucky enough to be able to share this? Can you see the slides? If not, okay, well, we're learning. Still no picture. Oh, yay. Okay, so you can see the questions. Thank you all. So these are the 7 questions. These come out of 18 different questions that, yay, these are 18 different questions that you had started, and I combined them. And so we're going to talk about leadership skills. We're going to talk about characteristics of great leaders. We're going to talk about the role of humor. We're going to talk about empowerment, servant leadership versus empathic leadership. Empathic leadership. We're going to talk about how the hero to host article might work in different countries. And we're going to talk about critical thinking skills and age and women's leadership and balanced goals. And also we'll finish up with strengths-based leadership. Okay, we are making this work. I'm going to stop sharing for a second. And so you can see my face again. Let's see if that works. If you get to see me once more. Oh, there we go. There I am. Okay, can you all see me? Hopefully. There's more of you that have joined, and I just want to say hello. We're going to go back to the slides, and I'm going to talk away and try to answer your questions to give you some more resources and ideas and keep our conversation going. All right, so there we go. Good. Oh, is there a difference between goals and objectives? Okay, I'm going to hang on to that question. It depends. That's a great question because for some people, the answer is yes, and other people, the answer is no. So we're going to talk about that, and we'll talk a little bit about strategic planning. So thank you, Raphael. We'll come back to that one. But I'm going to go back to these slides, and let's just dive in a little bit about how to develop great leadership skills and what are the characteristics of a great leader. So here we go. We're getting better at this. All right. So building leadership skills. This was the first thing that you were asking. I'm hoping, Emily, you're going to let me know. Okay. And then we'll talk. Hopefully everyone can see a slide that says building leadership skills. And how do we do that? So all of these years of reading and researching leadership, what I have found is one of our top leadership skills is self-awareness. And I will, yes, and Emily has just asked, will I send out these slides? And I will be happy to send these slides out at the end. Or I can send them, let me see if I can send them now so that our everyone can see. Okay, let me go back. I'm sorry. Let me send. How can I? Okay, sorry. Here we go. Come back. Um, I am learning how to do this on the fly. Okay, we have these. Building leadership skills. And I want to send these out. Let me see if I can send these out to our visually impaired participants. I apologize. Let me read what I've got here as I also wanted to figure out a way to send these. Okay, let me do this, my friends. I will read these, and then as we go, if I can figure out how to do it all at the same time, I will also send off these slides, but you will all have a copy of these slides at the end. So the first slide says building leadership skills. The first bullet is creating awareness. And I want to talk to you about why self-awareness is probably your most important leadership skill you've got. Sometimes we think it is to have great public speaking skills or a strong vision or strong project management strategies. But really, the key of leadership is understanding who we are and what we're good at. And even better, understanding what our team members are good at. And this recognition that what you don't know, what is it that you don't know you don't know? Sometimes we think we are much better at things than we actually are. So today I want to talk to you more about feedback and strategies to be aware of your impact. So when you ask, how can I be a great leader at home, in my family, and in my community, how can you be aware of what you are doing well, what you might be able to do better, or even better, what others might be able to do because it's their strengths. For example, a way to track what you are good at is to be asking for feedback. Also, to see what you really enjoy, what you love, and to notice what makes great leadership is to pay attention to what do other leaders that you respect do successfully. What makes other leaders successful? A big piece of developing great leadership is practicing leading. We learn to lead by leading. That's the next bullet. How can you create situations where you can lead and your team members can lead? There is formal leadership and informal leadership. Informal leadership is when you are willing to step up and help. Some of you were asking about outdoor activities that we can use to have people learn to lead by leading. One activity I have found very successful is to take a team of people and say that you are going to do a group hike or a group activity. So when you are planning for the hike is to figure out who has skills of organizing, who has natural physical skills, who has led hikes before, and in the planning and trying to make sure that everyone can to accomplish this hike, that you will practice organizing, communication skills, conflict resolution, looking for people's growing edges, recognizing where they are comfortable and where is the edge of their comfort zone. You can do the same thing with camping trips, with ropes courses, and some of you may have done them. I have led teams in maintaining trails or building something together. So these are some outdoor activity examples. Think about how can we practice leading by creating a challenge that has some fun to it, but pushes us enough that we can back up and look at how are we doing well, and how are we doing, and what leadership styles help us to lead well. When you are building leadership skills after an experience, it's really important to reflect. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about reflection. You remember we talked about this in the pre-departure module as well. So after you had an experience, say you decide you want to create an outdoor activity for your team and to have people practice taking on a fun challenge and then reflecting after, is you want to have time to observe what happened, to describe, we did this, then we did this, and then this fell apart, or this worked well. So you want to look at the outside experience. You want to reflect on your feelings. So this is, again, we're working on our self-awareness. How did I show up when I was leading? Where did I back up? Where was I nervous? Where did I lose confidence? Where did I feel confidence? What did I love doing? What insights did I have? And then what decisions am I or my team going to make in the future? This is the ORID model of reflection. And we've talked a little bit about the importance of reflection, but I wanted to come back to that. So we'll continue on. I'm going to see if I can come back to me. Okay, let's see. Can you, see me? Am I back? Emily's going to tell me. If I am back, as I'm learning how this works. Thank you, Emily. Yes, we see you. Okay. Oh, it's been me the whole time. Well, I was reading the slides, so that's really good. So this means that I can quickly, let's get those. I'm going to get these slides off to Emily, if you all don't mind. Let's see here. I'm going to see if I can figure out a way to do that easily. See if your friend here is computer savvy enough that I can have Emily send to all of you the slides. And I apologize. That is something I should have done earlier. Here we go. There. Okay. I'm sending Emily the slides, and she will send them on to you as we go back and forth. Thank you all for your flexibility. Well, I'm getting to practice adaptive leadership, and as are you. So thank you for your patience. All right. Let's see. So what I was talking about outdoor activities, and then the ability to reflect. But again, if you remember nothing else from today, is that our best leadership skill is knowing who we are, what makes me stronger, what throws me off, what are my gifts, my strengths, and what are others' strengths. So this idea of awareness. There was a huge study done by a gentleman named Donald Clifton, and I was looking for a book that you might be interested in called Strengths-Based Leadership. Someone was asking about strengths-based leadership, so I'm bringing him in today. He studied how to lead well across cultures, and he did it was about a 50-year study on great leadership. And he kept trying to figure out what makes a great leader? What are the characteristics of a great leader? So let's do a little exercise. What would you all say are the characteristics of a great leader? Type some of those in so you can see them, and Emily will give me some of those highlights. This was a question he asked of 20,000 people as in a big study, trying to figure out, if you want to be a great leader, what do you need to do? And I see Emily's probably grabbing some of those. And she's going to share a couple with me. So we might say compassion, or respect, right? But he asked this question of 20,000 people, and right before his death, okay, humility and character, right? These are fantastic. And we're going to talk about humility and humor here in a little bit. But when he was near his death in 2003, he came to the point where he recognized that it wasn't a single great characteristic, but what it was great leaders understand their own strengths and they know when to use them at the right times. And I want to add that it is, you also understand the strengths of your team and how to bring those things into being, into being used by the team, and giving them the space and the strength, the space and the empowerment to do what they want to do. So I'm going to look at some of these characteristics that you said. Yes, to be a host, not a hero, right? Listening to people. So notice that these are knowing the abilities of the team. Beautiful. These are beautiful characteristics. Thank you. Let's go back to the slide and we can talk more about this. So when you ask me, how do we develop the characteristics of great leadership? The key is to know yourself. And as well, there we go. We're going to come back here, come back to our slides. Let me go here. So you've been giving them to me. Is to know ourselves. What I'm also seeing is that you have a recognition that, and this is something that Donald Clifton brought into being, is the importance of both the head and the heart. So, oh, you lost me again. Hopefully you're seeing slides here. Did it work? No, we're going to see. Hopefully slides show up. Okay. I'm going to keep talking. You're going to tell me if they don't. All right. Not yet. Okay, I'll go back. Let's see. There I am again. Oh, this is great. Well, you all have a copy of the slides, thanks to Emily. And so I'll go back and forth and hopefully you'll get to see them. A leader inspires and motivates others. These are beautiful characteristics. And notice that they're a connection of the head and the heart. They are helping us to get things done, that we care about what the team is trying to create. We're helping to mobilize the team, but at the same time, we're caring about our people. And this is critical. And look at the beautiful, the solution, the different examples that you are providing. In Clifton's work, he found that there was actually 4 different areas that people would say what great leaders contribute to their followers. And that one was trust. And so you see that here, that you guys are talking about honesty and integrity and respect, caring about people, having empathy and compassion and friendship. And creating a place of strength and support, that you have a clear strategy. And then also that you're inspirational, that you're creating that vision and direction and guidance. And so you can see that sense of a leader inspires and motivates others, as you have written in the chat box. To continue on, let's see, I wanted to talk to you about, so, we're thinking about also great leadership. I wanted to refer you again to another study that I included in the Leading Change course, which is Exemplary Leadership, from James Kouzes and Barry Posner. There's a book called Leadership Challenge, which I highly recommend. They also did an extraordinary amount of research globally, saying what makes a great leader. And again, it's head and heart, and it is that you want to set a good example, that you model the way. If you're asking people to work late, you are working late. That you are willing to inspire a shared vision. So that's back to a leader inspires and has that clear vision and clear strategy. That you're willing to challenge the process is how can we make this world better? And how do you enable others to act, gather their strengths and leverage them and give them the space to shine. And then last is celebrating the heart, or and encouraging the heart. So how do we remember that life is short, and that really when it comes down to it, that it's being together and trying to make this world just a little bit better. So I hope I'm answering your question, great questions around what makes a great leader, how can I be better in my home and my family and my community, and what fun outdoor activities can I use? If you want more of those, come find me at Congress and I can talk about that. But you also asked, what's the difference between a servant leader and an empathic leader or an empathetic leader? And so I wanted to talk to you about that. When I think about, and you will find this in your slides on, let's see, we'll go to, you find slide 11, that you will see on slide 11, it says servant versus empathetic leader here, but you could also do it as empathic. A servant leader is, and there's a lot of work done by a gentleman named Greenleaf, who has written a book called Servant Leadership. So if you'd like more information about that, he brings us forward in a more Christian perspective, but it should, I think, there we go. Yay. Okay, everyone's got the slides. Thank you for that. Thank you all for being patient. That was my oversight, and I apologize. I should have sent those to you before. And thank you, Emily, for making sure that everyone's got them. So you'll see on slide 11, I wanted to give you two quotes that kind of embody for me what servant leadership looks like. And this is from a Taoist perspective, but we also find this in the servant leadership coming out of from the Christian tradition. And I, again, saying Greenleaf would be a resource for you. But servant leader is, I think, summed up here in this quote from the Tao Te Ching from Lao Tzu. The best leaders are those their people hardly know exist. The next best is a leader who is loved and praised. The next comes to the one who is feared, and the worst one is the leader that is despised. The best leaders value their words and they use them sparingly. When they have accomplished their task, the people say, "Amazing, we did it all by ourselves." So this sense that we are there to be of support and to serve the greater vision, to serve the community, to serve our employees or our team members. Then we think about, is there a difference of being an empathic or empathetic leader? And you'll see on slide 12, I think Mahatma Gandhi had an interesting way of thinking about empathy. There's a great book called Empathy, and this quote is in it as well. I've used this quote over the years, but loved seeing it in that book. And is to think about, when I am leading, how am I putting myself into another's shoes? How am I thinking about those that I serve, and can I understand what it is that they need? And if my actions are going to be of use to them. So Mahatma Gandhi said, whenever you are in doubt or the self becomes too much with you, apply the following test. Recall the face of the poorest and the weakest man whom you have seen, and ask yourself if the step you contemplate is going to be of any use to him. So thinking about leadership as, again, you are serving in that way, but the sense of you're putting yourself into the other person's shoes. So empathy and empathic leadership are very strong characteristics as well to help you to do well. I know many of you are doing important social justice work at home. You are doing community development work at home, and sometimes we think, oh, I know what they need, and off I go trying to make somebody's life better. But great leadership recognizes that it isn't my job to come in and fix, but it is to walk with, and that my destiny is connected with those who I'm serving, and it is about how we're walking together. I have worked with an organization called ICRA Fund, and they do education in rural Pakistan, in Gilgit-Baltistan, and Hunza Valley. Some of you may on this call be from Pakistan and know these regions. So very remote, working with communities. And instead, and this comes to servant leadership and empathic and empathetic leadership, is instead of saying, we need to build you a school and this is what you need and we're trying to fix you, the ICRA Fund comes in only after the invitation of the community and asks, what do you need? What do you want? What do you want for the future of your families, for your children, and for yourselves? And from there, they build a plan to help with education in rural Pakistan. Their destinies are connected and in line with one another. This is not about fixing. Leadership should never be about fixing. And that brings us back, like you all are saying, to being a host and not a hero. So lots of things to think about. And this is what your questions are creating in me. So I wanted to give you one more definition of leadership that I hope will help you. And this is from Ronald Heifetz, who wrote a great book called Adaptive Leadership. Again, I can give you resources for a long time to come, but he would say that leadership is the mobilization of the resources of a people or of an organization to make progress on the difficult problems it faces. So mobilization of resources. So it's not my job to come in and fix, but instead to host and leverage and support and help people to move forward. Now, some of you were asking me, saying, well, this hero to host, going from a hero to host idea is great, but will that work in my country? And does it work around the world? And that's a great question. I want it, and there's others of you who said, should a great leader be both a critical thinker and as well as unbiased? And so I want to combine those two together and give you some ideas and some thinking around that as well. So if you go to your slides, you'll see that I have on slide 14, I say, does hero to host work everywhere? I want to talk to you a little bit about leadership styles and what people want from us as leaders, and cultural biases, and can we always do critical thinking and be unbiased? And then I also wanted to go back to something we've talked about in the training around power and inclusive leadership. Because one of you said that in your experience, often a leader is defined as a man who's in charge, a man who has power. And how do we shift that to anyone who wants to help at this time? Anyone that wants to mobilize resources and make a problem, to resolve a problem. How do we help have leadership instead be any one of us making the world just a little bit better, and that poorest and weakest man that we have met, that we are supporting their world, that person's world improving. So we're going to move on to that, and hopefully that works. You'll see. So you were asking, someone asked, do some people in some countries just want to be delegated to, and they want to be very directed and have people just tell them what to do? And is that different in different countries? Here's what I found looking at this question and research cross-culturally. There are 6 different standard leadership styles, and you can find these across the board. And these are different ways that we can lead depending on the situation. So we're going now into the field of situational leadership. Each of us have ways, and you'll see on slide 15 that I've given you 6 different leadership styles, and I want to talk to you about those. But I first wanted to say there are ways, given our strengths, that we like to lead. Some of us are really creative and we like to create new ideas, and we get it, we're visionary leaders and we're pace setting leaders. Like, we like to create a new path and we want everyone to follow us. And that means that those leadership styles of being a visionary and being a pace setter are most exciting to us. Others of us really have strengths in being organized. We can create plans, and we know how to do project management, and we get excited about tracking on SMART goals, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and objectives. And so we each have default styles that we like to use when we lead, because it's connected to our strengths. But one of the attributes of great leadership is, as we've said, from Donald Clifton's work, and I'm going to also draw from Peter Drucker's work. One of you brought up his work, is that great leadership says, I know what I'm really good at, and I know what that person's good at, and I'm going to look at the situation and know what needs to be applied. So there are times when you're working in an organization and people want you to be more directive. They want you to, as you see on the chart on slide 15, they want you to be more managerial, maybe even autocratic or commanding, which is to say, I'd like you to do this and do it now. But that's reading the situation. If you're trying to build your team and use their strengths and not have to be in charge all the time, which can get exhausting, you might also want to use the coaching style. This is work that comes out of the research of Daniel Goleman. And there you go. Okay, this is good. Oh, good. Okay, you just saw another question, sorry, from Emily. So I will talk about that as well. So is to figure out, when do I need to ask everybody what they think? Use democratic leadership. When do I need to help create a shared vision with everyone and use visionary leadership? When do I need to coach others and to help them to improve their own skills and give them more understanding how the organization works? So to answer your question, does Hero to Host work everywhere? From my experience, it does. And it's a recognition not only of our role is to mobilize the resources and to help them move forward. So our job is to help people to do better, but also understand the culture that we're working within. So if the culture typically has leaders as very directive, how can I use that information and at the same time recognize there may be times where I want to empower these people and not misuse my own power. And so I'm calling you to do calling you to look at the leadership styles and how to not be the person who's always in charge and who's always pushing everyone, even if it is considered culturally appropriate, because it gets exhausting. It gets exhausting. So Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide, which is slide 16, which talks about our diverse perspectives. And so one of the other pieces of self-awareness, which is our theme for today, is to have have awareness of my culture as well. And how can I move within my culture? So a way to think about culture is it's like we are all fish. And I live in a certain part of the ocean, and those are the waters I swim in. And I don't even know that I am swimming around in water. So you will find in the United States that we do certain things. I'm sure you've noticed this, and you think, that is crazy what they're doing. and the Americans around you are going, no, this is normal what we're doing, right? It's like we were all born and we all put on different colored cultural glasses. And so I might have glasses that have yellow lenses, and you may have glasses that have green lenses. And so I look at the world through these glasses. But the challenge with culture is we don't even know that we have these glasses on. So how can you, when you're trying to bring this to better mobilize resources to help a group face the problems that they are confronted with, how can you pay attention, self-awareness of the styles that you like to use, the styles that are most accepted in the culture, and what is most needed at this time, and whose strengths are best employed. So hopefully that combines all of that together. Emily asked if you're sending me all these great questions here. Let me see if I can get to them. Okay. This is wonderful. Okay, so Samuel was asking if you can help explain how servant leadership fits in with inclusive leadership. So the idea is, so Samuel, your next question is, what's the impact of culture on leadership, and is it wise to adopt a leadership style based on one's culture? It always depends, right? So in The Art of War, by Sun Tzu, an old Taoist text, 3,000 years old or more, talks about how to confront challenges. And one of the tricks that book shares is that you may want to act in line with your culture to bring people to your side, to get them to carry your flag. And then as you develop that trust, is to help to move them to be able to mobilize. So you may start out as a more directive leader because that's what's expected of you, but you recognize that there are 6 leadership styles and that you are best served if you can use all 6 of them to be able to help both people, so that you can both connect to people's hearts and their heads, to have them think that they're doing things themselves, and to have them adore you. So notice that culturally you may start a certain place, but sneak in other styles. One of the other gifts of servant leadership and this idea of being a great host and mobilizing everyone is recognizing the more people that you have on your team, the better. And often we forget that people who are not like us, they actually probably bring more important gifts than those who are like us. Because if they're like us, we already have that perspective covered. So, for example, here's an example today. I was operating again from a culture of using my eyes. Samuel is helping me and reminding me, and Deidre, we need our slides so that we can read this, that we can use our screen reader and read the slides, because we can't necessarily see them. Without that perspective, I am less. With Samuel and our other visually impaired fellows, I am better. So this is just a simple example. And you could see what was lacking when I wasn't being as inclusive as a leader as I could have been. So thank you for asking those questions, Samuel, and thank you all for asking for the slides. And we get to learn in public here. So hopefully that's asking. Here's an example of this. Milton Bennett has done a lot of transformative work in, and you'll see this in slide 17. He's done a lot of work around being interculturally sensitive. How do I create a more inclusive environment? And to draw from multiple cultures and multiple perspectives. It is easy for us, and you'll see these are the different areas that we go through often when we're thinking about culture. Sometimes we're in denial. We think everyone is the same as us. And it's important for us to become aware of differences and different perspectives. Then we move into defense. Sometimes we'll think, well, they should be the same as us because I'm doing it the right way. Or I minimize it and think, oh, they'll be fine. So great inclusive leadership is really continuing to work to say there's so many ways that we can walk through this life, so many different perspectives. There are so many things that I am not aware of, but those on my team might be. And how diverse is the team that I've created? So I call you to pay attention as something, as you look at your teams and look at how you're swimming in your culture, and how can I back up and be self-aware and look for as much diversity as possible. So answering that question about the importance of servant leadership, how do I serve by being more inclusive? So great questions. These are fantastic. I want to refer you to slide 18 as well, and return us back to, let's see. Oh, good. You guys have more questions for me. This is great. Okay. Let me, good. Okay. So Arisa and Nika, see if this is going to answer some of your questions. And then I'm gonna come back to your two questions. Arisa asked, what is the best way to change people's culture, or to move people forward when they're disappointed by a certain leader? And then where's the border between a power relationship and leadership? So let's talk about dominant culture for a minute and how power is awarded within our cultures. And we can then talk about how it's connected to leadership. There are people who are considered more powerful in our communities than others. And it is often connected to these different 8 attributes, and I will read them. Your economic status. Are you wealthy? Are you considered poor? What is your religion or creed? What's your gender? How old you are? What's your level of education? What's your level of, or what are your abilities? What is your ethnicity? And what is your sexual orientation? So one of you was asking, how do we work to create more inclusive leadership and an understanding of diversity around gender and women's empowerment, women's economic empowerment? How do we do that in a culture that may give much more power to a man who is of the major religion in my country, who's probably between the ages of 30 to 50, right? And has a lot of education. and considered straight. So how do we open up to in a more inclusive model where we are getting perspectives and strengths from a range of economic status, of religion or creed, of gender, of age, of education, of ability, of an ethnicity, and of such sexual orientation. So I like to, how do we, so this is a ongoing conversation. And as we think about, I want to look at these. Okay. Yeah. So between the relation between power and leadership. So we have this question of innate power that's given within our culture. And how do we not misuse our power when we're given a formal leadership role? If we are in informal leadership, how again are we trying to create an inclusive environment? And how do we use power well? How do we use power well? So if I happen to be within the dominant culture, how can I bring in others and other perspectives that may not be at the table at this time? I wanted to talk to you about that from a place of women. Okay, let me see here. Yeah, so great leadership is considering power and gender. Who are we missing? You'll see on slide 19, who are we missing? And discovering what is lost in the conversation. I want to give you a very simple example. So again, if I have power, either given to me by my culture or by a formal leadership position or by the respect of my team, how do I use that to call for greater diversity and to bring more perspective in so that we have better solutions and we can mobilize our resources to address the problems? For example, women, they found that women at the negotiation table, you'll see I have a chart in here for you on chart 21, slide 21. If you look at the statistics on women, and many of these I'm using, I wanted to show you from the United States, but you can find this around, some of these are United States studies, and then some are studies, and let me read them to you, are global studies. But there was a Northeastern study on women getting funding in the United States, and they found that they did a study, and they took out for size of the organization and experience and education and everything. And they found that women, by and large, were getting a small percentage of the available funding for startup businesses. And it went right down to because they were women. For example, the small business loans, only 11 to 13% of small business loans are being awarded to women. In the US corporations, the career trajectory is you bring a woman, there's 50% of women in the starting ranks, but by the time you get to CEO positions, it's only 5%. And what are we losing as a result of this one difference of gender? This is what I wanted to bring up. Globally, what we found is when women participate in the peace process, when you are acting as inclusive leaders and saying, we have to get a mediation table together, if you are bringing women into the process, the agreement is 35% more likely to last at least 15 years. Yet, in a global study that I can send you, women's representation currently in the peace processes around the world is only 2% of the mediators are women, 8% are the negotiators are women, and only 5% of the witnesses, which is crazy, and the signatories are women. So we are losing an incredible opportunity just right there. So how do we as inclusive leaders is to think about who is considered appropriate at our boardroom tables and our mediation tables, and how do we make that more open? Meanwhile, women around the world are performing 75% of the world's unpaid work. So they're busy, and how do we get them at our table? So I'm hoping that that answers some of those questions. Another, you had asked about how to change people's perception when they're disappointed by a certain leader. How can you use cultural norms to bring people to your side? If, for example, we were saying, how do you deal with women? How do you deal with a rigid culture that doesn't value women's economic empowerment? Think of an approach is, and you'll find this in my book, Worst Enemy, Best Teacher, is how you can use the culture to bring people to your side. So thinking about what are the stories or the myths that we have about women in our culture, and how can we use those to actually create change and bring people to think, well, of course, we need to protect women, and this is one of the ways we protect them. So it's a little, it's kind of being tricky and strategic, a little bit manipulative, actually, on how do we use the cultural stories to bring forward the empowerment and the equality that we want. How do we get women to those peace processes so that we have lasting peace in our communities, in the world? So I throw that out. Another set of people that we want to make sure are at our table are the young and the old. And so to look at your dominant culture, how are young people perceived? What are we missing if we don't have youth at our boardroom tables or our negotiation tables? What happens when we lose our elders? And this is an issue in the United States, is what happens when we lose our elders and their wisdom at the table. I wanted to turn you on to a very inspiring person, Diana Nyad. And Diana Nyad, at 64 years old, and on her fifth attempt, her final attempt, she swam. She's this amazing swimmer. She swam 110 miles from Cuba to Florida in the United States. And this is what she said after she completed her 53-hour journey. She said, I have 3 messages. 1 is we should never give up. 2 is you are never too old to chase your dreams. So you can learn leadership at any age. And 3, what looks like a solitary sport takes a team. So this is wisdom that is coming from an informal leader, and so how do we recognize the power of listening to our elders, and seeing that leadership, because it's just a set of skills that we can learn at any age. Also recognize, what can I learn about my own culture and how a young person is perceived, and how do I use that to my credit to move things forward? So, for example, if you one of you was talking about how in your culture that if you're really young, that you might not be listened to, but culturally you might be very expected to be mentored and to ask advice and to learn from your elders. How might you use that cultural norm to help to bring your ideas forward to make the world a better place? So how do I show up to help? Because leadership is just about helping and mobilizing resources. How do I show up in a way and use the culture to move where I want to go? Hoping that is making sense. So we can learn, we can be great leaders at any age. How do we use our culture to cultural norms to negotiate it. And you see there, I wrote on slide 20, you want to work with the dominant culture. Uh, and again, that we should never give up. We're never too old to trace our dreams, and even if it looks like you're all alone, it's actually you've always got a team that supports you. So great wisdom there. All right. Okay, we've only got a half an hour left, and there's so many great things. Okay. Is there a relationship between leadership and personality types? Raphael was asking, and Raphael, you asked another great question here. I want to go back to that. And the difference between goals and objectives. Okay. So yes. Leadership styles comes in a lot into our personality types as well. If we had more time together, I would do an assessment with you that I've developed. We can talk about that more. But the idea is recognizing that your strengths and your passions and your personality also drive your leadership style. But you want to be able to develop all 6 different styles. I will send you the resources on that. And okay, let me make sure you guys have sent me all these great questions. Yes, can a great leader also be a great manager of an organization? Maria is asking. That is a wonderful, you're bringing up the difference between leadership and management. In my experience, that yes, and recognizing those are 2 different roles. A manager sustains and nurtures what is. A leader is trying to lead us to a new place. So we're trying to affect positive change, to mobilize resources. So there is this recognition that when it's like you put different hats on. I can be a great manager and sustain an organization. And I can also be a great leader where I'm pushing for change and mobilizing. But for me, it's helpful to recognize which hat I have on if I'm going to do my work well. I hope that helps. So you remember that leadership assessment that I included in the Leading Change pre-departure module, and we talked about there was 4 different areas of leadership, and some of them are you can think of it as, where am I doing practical management in my role as a formal leader, and where am I doing more that visionary leadership pushing, and recognizing where I'm more tuned to do it, and what's easiest for me, and then also what is what is called for at this time. Again, going back to that being a leader as a host instead of a hero. Let's see. Oh, so many different things. Okay, you guys are just sending me these great questions, and then I have all these other questions that you had sent me. Are leaders born or made? Is there anything like a natural leader? Vincent's asking. And Steve is asking, which factors impact effective leadership when resources are limited or literally absent? These are great questions. Okay. In my mind, if you are a leader, if you want to mobilize resources and if you want to help, right? So some of us come in with great communication skills, or our parents or our families have really pushed us to have great communication skills. That's a skill. Some of us have a natural gift of that. But you'll find there are amazing leaders who aren't good communicators, but they know how to get good communicators on their team. You'll find other leaders that are really creative and visionary, and just that's a natural one of their strengths or their gifts. Not all leaders, not all great leaders are visionaries, but they know how to find others who can help with the visionary work. So it comes back to, if we think of leadership again, from all of this work around strengths-based leadership, inclusive leadership, adaptive, it all comes back down to being aware of what I'm naturally good at and I like to do, and what you are naturally good at and you like to do, and leveraging those strengths to get the work done that we want to get done. So that would say there are probably some people who are naturally more self-aware, but luckily for all of us, that is a skill we can learn. So leaders, great leaders, some of them maybe have that great gift of being able to go, wow, I'm looking over there and I realize Vincent is really good at developing strategy. And oh, I look over there and I realize that Nika has this incredible gift of organization. And some people probably are naturally good at that, but we can all practice self-awareness and to get better at recognizing other people's strengths and as well as our own. I want to refer you using this question. I'm going to refer you to the slide, and I'm gonna describe this slide for my visually impaired friends. So this is called, it's slide 6, and it is the Johari window. It was developed by Joseph Lutz and Harrington Ingram. So Joe and Harry, so they called it the Johari window. It was developed in 1955 as part of a behavioral psychology study. But it is super, super helpful when we come to thinking about how to become more self-aware and thus better leaders. This slide is broken up into 4 quadrants, like a window. And the first quadrant is what I know and what you know. And that is your public window. So you know, for example, that I live in Montana because you watched the Leading Change course. You know I love to work with leaders like you. You know these different things about me. You know I have 3 children. That's my public window. Then if I go to the next quadrant of the window, so if I go from left to right, the upper right quadrant, it's what you know about me, but it's not I don't know about myself. And that is my blind spots. So you may notice things about me that I am not aware of. The bottom left quadrant is what I know, but it's stuff I haven't told you, and that's my private window. And then the last quadrant, the lower right-hand quadrant, is unknown. You don't know it, and I don't know it. To improve our self-awareness, to improve our trust, self-trust and self-confidence. One of you was asking about self-confidence and trust, people trusting in us as leaders. We want to do 2 things. We want to ask often for feedback, and that will expand our public window into basically it moves our public window and makes it bigger, so that something that there was things that I didn't know about myself, but you knew, and through feedback, I can expand my public window and I can know it and you can know it. I also can practice sharing. And letting you know where I am and what I'm working with and what I'm struggling with and what I'm wondering about and where I have questions. And through sharing, I start to tell you about things you might not have known. By expanding my public window where both you know it and I know it, I create greater trust. And what we find is that trust is a key component of leadership. And it also allows me to have better access my strengths and understand strengths of others. So that is chart 6, and I hope that is helpful to answer your question about if leaders are born or made. And okay, so let me go to, these are all so many great questions. So Steve, you were asking about which factors impact effective leadership when resources are limited or literally absent. Okay, and I can give you some examples between a leader and a manager. Okay, so So, which factors impact effective leadership when resources are limited or literally absent? When we are in scarcity, things get hard, right? So this is what you're describing. You're saying, how can we be effective leaders when we are in a crisis of some time? Either we don't have enough time or enough money or enough staff or enough resources. So if I know myself well and I know you well, I know what strengths I naturally have. Effective leadership focuses first on what's working and strengths. As you remember from the Celebrating Your Struggles video, that TEDx talk that I did, that if we can start in gratitude, and remember this from positive psychology as well, so this is to answer your question, is we want to start with what is working. What is working? So, what strengths do we have? What resources do we have? Where are we? What is going well? And then from there, we want to focus on the challenge that we have at hand. It is as though we spiral. So I'm going to, for those of you who may not be able to see me, I'm spiraling my finger. And what happens is, as a team, when we're struggling with resources, we can often spiral down into fight flight in our brains, and we don't problem solve as well. So how can you, as leaders, either formal or informal, keep people focused on what is going well and how we can leverage what we do have to move forward? So that is the key. When we do that, we stay calm, and we are staying more from a brain standpoint in our neocortex, where we can think in past, present, and future. And then we can also creative problem solve. And we remember that we have people on our team. When we get scared, we go into hero. And we're not nearly as effective alone as we are together. So hopefully that answers your question. And I'm just going to say, those are the hard times. Those are our real leadership tests. Okay, so leader and manager. Okay. All right. Use two situations to differentiate between a leader and a manager. Okay, so I'm going to give it to you in another way. You can think of it as there are technical problems and strategic or adaptive problems. Technical problems are when the manager shows up. So end of month budget, putting the budget together, getting, paying the bills for the phone system. The things that are the technical things that we do them the same day in, day out. Those are when we use more of our managerial skills, getting performance reviews put together, sending out a newsletter. So there's the technical tasks, and then there are the adaptive tasks where we need to mobilize resources and get things to be even better. So those would be adaptive leadership, so those would be the leader side. So that might be looking at our current vision and how it could be better, dealing with a conflict we have with a customer, dealing with conflict within our organization that is hurting our teams. You can think of it as you go into a project management meeting, and some of that is going to be management work. Running the meeting, making sure everybody's there, taking minutes, technical tasks. Then there is listening to where we are challenged and how I can use the different resources on our team to be even better. Leadership tasks. And so that for me is helpful when I am thinking about the work that I'm being called to do. So management tasks, in some ways, we are more of a hero. We're just going to do those tasks. Leadership calls us to mobilize and to better host. So I'm hoping that that helps. Okay, there's more. All right. Oh, you guys have given me so many good questions here. I'm hoping I've been talking a lot about strengths-based leadership. One of you asked a great question about it. So strength-based leadership, if you're interested in that, and you can tell I really agree with it because it fits with all the brain research and all the positive psychology research and what makes people happy. And so you can look at the work of the Gallup Corporation, and they did a book called Strengths-Based Leadership, and they've got others. And that's Donald Clifton is the father of all of that. And then Peter Drucker, who wrote quite a bit on strength-based leadership. You've got Sean Akers' work, who is positive psychology. And so I'll pass all of that along. And strengths-based leadership is that idea, focus on the strengths. If someone doesn't like to do something and they're not good at it, we don't focus on that as much. They may want to improve it, and we can help them with that through coaching, but we don't focus on the weaknesses. We focus on what we do have. And our brains seem to work best when we're focusing on it. It's not that we ignore where there's challenges, but we're looking at beginning from what works. And cross-culturally, we find in all of our lasting traditions, they always tell us to start by counting our blessings. So it's something that we've known for a very, very long time. So pass that along. I'm going to go back to your questions. Okay, so who's a great leader? Oh my, okay. That is a political and difficult question. I wish you could have asked me that in 2016 in like July before the election. For me, great leadership looks like this. It recognizes that everyone is valuable. It honors inclusive leadership. It honors all of the people who should be at the table. As you can tell, it is thinking about how am I making this world more just and allowing those who can't speak to be heard. Whether that is, and I know some of your work is in this, is whether it is those who are human and don't have a voice at the table, or our forests, or or animal life. It's how do we think about who together we're with. And I love that when people research and ask people about great leaders, and we're going to do this when we're at Congress, it's often not some great political leader. It's often those who we see every day. And that is empowering to me because it means that part of our job is to be a great leader in our homes and in our communities and in our offices. And that's really where we're affecting most change. I think about one of the greatest leaders I've worked with is one of my best friends, and she runs a organization of students. And I just always want to see how she's going to lead at every moment. You all will never meet her, and yet she influences me deeply. So that's a great question for all of us to take forward. As you can tell, I had a lot of respect for President Barack Obama because I think he held that bigger lens, and as did Michelle. So I miss that kind of leadership. That was wonderful on a personal level to watch. But we can talk about the political and the effectiveness and all those other things. But this Arisa was asking, why do normal people sometimes love bad leadership styles? I know, right? And for example, people who mistreat and disrespect others. Yeah, I know. Welcome to the United States. That's a great question. I want to ask you guys, why do you think that happens? I'd love to hear Why do you think, as we only have 10 minutes left and I have a couple other things I want to cover, but I would love to hear from you. Why do you think we get enamored as a people, or do we, with people who mistreat or disrespect people? I don't understand it. I think sometimes we're looking for a quick answer and we'll overlook the bad because we want a short-term fix that someone might be promising us, and we may not. Um, um, I'm going to go a different direction. There's with both Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King, two leaders that I really respect, and I feel like their work has stood the test of time in terms of how they led. They both said that the ends and the means need to be the same. The ends and the means need to be the same. And sometimes people hear the end and they're willing to ignore the mean. And I wonder if that is why sometimes we will put up with bad leadership. What do you all think? Why do you think that that happens? Do we get enamored with, if you're telling me I'm going to make more money, or I'm going to have more power, or I'm going to get more stuff, that I'm going to ignore your poor leadership and that you're not modeling the way? So I put that out to you because it makes me shake my head sometimes too. So I'll let Emily share with me whatever you guys come up with. I'm going to go through here. I wanted to make sure I went through some of these different charts. We had so many fun things to cover. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all of your great questions. These have been fun to think about. Oh, I wanted to, okay, so leader, okay. One of you asked for success stories, and that made me think of storytelling. So I put a few slides in here for you about that leaders, one of our jobs is to be storytellers. And so we want to always be sharing successes, and specifics are our friends. You'll see on slide 23. So how can you put a face and to the work that you are doing, and how do you celebrate your team? So you can think of one of your jobs as you mobilize resources is to tell their story. Tell the story of your team, tell the story of its vision. You think of Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech as an example of that. And how do we keep bringing that forward? So you wanted a success story, and I thought I'd tell you one. Okay, this is great. Oh, good. Okay, so I'm sorry I stopped because Emily's sharing with me. She's gonna answer and give us some great information about what happens when we work in a bad environment. It's awful, isn't it? It's not fun for any of us. All right, so I wanted to give you a success story, and this is because you were asking about how can we tell a story about what happens when women are empowered and given economic opportunity, and how that can look different. And so you'll see on slide 25 is I wanted to tell you about an initiative that's being done by another ECA professional fellow. She was a community solutions fellow, and also, so she's kind of part of our family. She did the 4-month professional fellows program called Community Solutions. She was also part of the YLI program, the Young Latin American Leaders. And this is Marisela Zamora, and she created an initiative called Nosotras, Women Connecting. And her vision was women empowering other women. That's the story that she was telling. And she told it all over Costa Rica. And she said, here's what I want to do is I want to have women who have experience and who are empowered and have skills to empower other women who may not have that opportunity. And 2 years ago, she created a program. She told her story and was able to meet the vice president of Costa Rica, a woman named Ana Elena Chacon. And Ana Elena loved her idea, loved her vision. So here she is, leader, a storyteller. And she created a program where she has a lab where they bring 20 entrepreneurial young women, and you'll see a picture of all of them on slide 26, together for a week of workshops. And then we have a day-long speaking event. Marisela is very smart. She is a leader as a host. So one of the people that she called was me, and she said, would you come down and volunteer your time to teach this workshop? And I said, you get me a plane ticket and a place to stay, and I'm there. So she knew how to bring in her resources, and you'll see that I'm in that picture on slide 26. And for those of you who may not be able to see slide 26, it is a picture of 22 women on a stage clapping. And so you have Marisela there and our 20 young entrepreneurs after their workshop, and as well myself. So I refer you to this as a success story, and it just continues to grow. This year, Marisela added a market where 40 vendors, women-owned businesses, came in and sold different products and told about their social entrepreneurship strategies and businesses like creating affordable housing. And you can find all that on nosotraslasmujeres.org if you wanted to learn more. So I want to provide that to you as a leader, when you're telling your story, it can be amazing what happens. What Marisela started out with is, I just want to create this small laboratory for 20 women to have a couple days with, to build their businesses and to get leadership and business skills. And it has grown and grown and grown. And I hope that each of you will keep telling your stories and keep telling us your stories, because it's exciting and fun, and there may be a way that we can help. And so I'm hoping that you will continue to share with us what you are learning and what you are envisioning, and that we can then share it with others. So we've only got 3 minutes left, and I love that Emily has sent off talking about how sometimes we start to think that that in a bad leadership situation is that's as good as it can get, and that if our leaders are treating us poorly, that's just the way we are to be treated, and we start to lose that ability to understand what it means to be respectful and kind and to create trust and hope and compassion, right? Those great gifts that a leader can give to another. I wanted to read you Donald Clifton's quote from slide 27. What great leaders have in common is that each truly knows his or her strengths and can call on the right strength at the right time. That explains why there's no definitive list of characteristics that describes all leaders. So I hope that inspires you to recognize that every one of us has something to contribute, and that if you want to take us to a better place, you are leading, either informally or formally, and that we need you. I'm going to refer you to slide 28, which is from Peter Drucker, and says, the task of leadership is to create an alignment of strengths in ways that makes a system's weaknesses irrelevant. So it's okay as a system, if just me, I have weaknesses, but if I can leverage my strengths and I align them, I have the great gift of making things better. And if I can do that in a team, it's even better. I'm going to go to the last couple slides. One of you was sharing with us, I'm going to see on slide 30 and 31, one of you was sharing a great question saying, after you gave us background, and one of the things you said is that every year you sit down and you create an annual review and you create goals for your body and your mind and your spirit. And you set up those goals with clear objectives. Oh, I need to talk about that. I haven't done that yet. And ways to monitor. And then when an opportunity or information arises, you use that framework to decide if you're going to pay attention to that opportunity or not. Is it aligned with my goals? And you asked if I had any thoughts about that framework. Okay, let me talk quickly about goals and objectives. Some people see goals and objectives as the same thing. And so when you are doing strategic planning in your organization or planning, it's important to get a clear alignment on what you mean by goal and what you mean by objectives. Some organizations use objectives as like a larger, broader goal. And then they go to SMART goals. And you remember those from the Leading Change course, that they are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. And I refer you back to the course to look at those kind of goals. But I was going to say, some people think objectives and goals as the same. It's kind of an important conversation to have as you're defining your strategic plan. You want to think about, with strategic planning, and we have a little of this, and I can give you more resources if you want. When you're creating a strategic plan, is you have your vision, your mission, your guiding principles or code of conduct. If you want to have overall objectives, larger objectives, you want to have large strategies, and then specific goals. But again, you can decide how you want to name those. In this case, I think the person was having larger objectives and then specific goals. So I wanted to quickly, recognizing that it's time to be done, answer, what do I think of this framework? It's a wonderful gift, and I try to do it as well as once a year to sit down and think, what do I want to be in 2018? What are things that I want to get done? How can I better organize myself? David Allen's work, as you know, we have David Allen in our course. In his book, Getting Things Done, he talks about if we can get organized and clear on what we want, we can act as though we are a still lake, which means that we are calm enough that if new opportunities come, we can welcome them if they fit in. I want to refer you to the empowerment work of David Gershon and Gail Straub as well. And again, they talk about setting those objectives and the vision for your year. Finally, you have in our time management class, we talked about focusing on quadrant 2. So I would say, how do you hold the paradox of creating a framework that you use to decide what you're going to do each day and create enough openness that you can be available for new opportunities you haven't considered? So I give you those resources as ideas. I love that you're focusing on a balance of your body, mind, and spirit. I also add emotions, and you see that in the Way of Conflict book. And I can talk more about all of this at Congress, and hope that these resources are helpful to you. Whew, that was a lot of talking for an hour and a half. I wish I was engaging in conversation with you, as you can tell. I'm envisioning each of you out there listening, and I'm hoping that we've started a conversation that we can continue in Washington, D.C. And if there's any resources or any questions that you have, please don't hesitate to email me. I am going to all of you who RSVP'd, I will send out some of these different resources that we discussed. I'll send the slides again and remind you of the link to this training. So I hope each and every one of you are well, and thank you for spending your time with me today. And Emily, thank you for making this work. I'm going to sign off, and again, thank you all, and travel safe to Washington, D.C.